jeans and a flannel, tattoos hidden under the sleeves. Come home, she's smiling and she's not much to handle. She's not dependent on me. She stares out the window, why don't we just stay in? She sips on Jaeger bombs and listens to her favorite songs. I fell lost in the weeds and she came down and I started breathing. It's never a judgment day, flip the world around, seeing colors in different shades. Flip the world around, seeing colors in different shades. Flip the world around, seeing colors in different shades.
Hello to everyone on the interwebs. I thank you for stopping by at the Fueled by Coffee podcast. Hope you enjoy what you hear. I thank you to any SoundCloud listeners and any Instagram followers that are listening to this. If you're new here, you can give us a follow at Fueled by Coffee Pod on Instagram. Also, give us a follow right here on SoundCloud. We post new episodes usually every 2 weeks. We cover lots of different topics. So far this season, we have covered actually one episode. It was about my musical endeavors with my old music project, Union Coffee Break. So go check that out if you want to hear about my passions for music and working on music as a young, angsty teenager. But today, we're here for an episode. We're going to discuss another person's musical endeavors that are going on currently and talk about the Birds, how disappointing they are, and then probably close out with a little Madden talk. But it should be a fun discussion. Hopefully there's something for everyone. We're just going to get right into it. So last week, or 2 weeks ago, I was recording with my now co-host. I heeded your advice last season.
Hell
and
yeah.
I promoted Aaron to co-host.
Where is he today?
I don't know.
Going on?
I don't know, man.
We'll have to do another one with the three of us once we need to initiate him as co-host.
We have to haze him. No. But yeah, we talked about Union Coffee Break and some of the music he and I did that went unreleased. It was a good music talk, so I highly encourage everyone to check that out. But today, we're at the other end of the spectrum, speaking to Aaron's brother, Pete, about his endeavors with my cousin's girlfriend's house. We're going to talk about what they've been up to. We're going to drop their newest single that just came out recently, give everyone a listen, and just to throw it out there, I would like to welcome everyone back to my dark bedroom.
Hey, dark bedroom.
If you listened to the episode that Pete and Aaron and I did last season, there was some talk about my dark bedroom and how I have a nudist podcast because no one can...
I can clearly see that you're wearing an Eagles jersey, at least by the numbers.
Well, you know what? All right. Well, I wore this for you.
Thank you. Woo!
I wore I wore Nick Foles because there was a little controversy. There was a little controversy on the last episode we recorded where you were claiming that I would rather Baker Mayfield be under center at quarterback for the Eagles, which honestly at this point I would welcome that. That was before last season, but we're going to get into that in a little bit. We'll get
into it. Before we do get into it, I want to say I'm tempted right now to run upstairs because for Christmas I got a FOLES Bears jersey, so I could throw.
Oh, dude, so did I. No way.
Are you serious? You got a Bears FOLES? No way. All right, we'll cover it when we get to that point. But I just had to say I would be wearing it, but instead I'm sporting my Eagles gear because they are still my team and always will be. Of course.
But Pete, thank you for coming back to the podcast. Very happy to have you here. I hope that intro wasn't too much of a jumbled mess. I am sleep deprived right now.
Man. I wanted to say I was just about ready to send you a custom bag of coffee for Christmas.
Really?
And call it, because I think last time we were on, there was a callback to an earlier episode about like the Brown Month.
Mm-hmm.
And I forget what you and Aaron were saying something. One of you was like, we should get like our own coffee roast and call it the Brown Roast or something like that.
Yeah.
I was about ready to.
Yeah. So before we jump into it, speaking of coffee, that's a good segue. Today, the day that we're recording this episode is late January, and it is currently disgustingly cold outside. Like, it's cold enough that it could be Christmas. And the reason why I say that is because I am currently drinking the Wawa holiday blend out of my vintage Wawa tumbler thing that I got for Christmas. So shout out to Wawa. Please sponsor me. I will dedicate my firstborn to you if it means I get a sponsorship. They will work a life's work for you.
Yeah. Yeah, I will do that as well. I will double down on that if you sponsor this pod.
But yeah, Wawa Holiday Blend, great tasting coffee. It's amazing. And Pete had a special little drink he wanted to plug.
You know, I had my coffee this morning already. It's actually, like you said, freezing out, and I had to move out of an apartment, like the finishing touches of moving out of an apartment today. So I had to be outside in this cold.
Oh, great.
So I had my coffee this morning, just the standard homemade Maxwell House or whatever, and I'm okay with that. I know a lot, some friends aren't willing to drink that, and I don't know. Just for the money you are saving by brewing your own pot at home, it's like, I don't know. I think it's just as good as the stuff you get out at, like, not Wawa per se, but I'd say it's just as good as, like, if you go to 7-Eleven, you're getting the same stuff that you're making at home.
It's a classic. Right? It's a classic.
You know, I would say.
For sure.
So had that this morning, and now I'm having a Samuel Adams Boston Lager to chill out in the afternoon now as I am inside and warm.
There you go. There you go. Get nice and toasty, get warmed up, and get ready for a great discussion. Let's jump right in. My cousin's girlfriend's house. Last time we spoke, you guys were working in the studio, and then by the time the episode dropped, I was able to slip in Let's Hear It for Harold, which was your like debut single. But you know, it's been almost a year since we recorded that episode, so what have you guys been up to since then?
Well, that's rather unfortunate to hear that it's already been like a year since we recorded that, and we still don't have our release out. You know, when we last talked to you, we were just a little nugget of a band just starting up. Like, we finally had some songs ready, and we were set to go into the studio and knock them out. And then COVID happened, so we were finishing recording Harold in the studio as like our first single. Yeah. Like the week that the world shut down, so it was like we went home from that last session, and we really weren't able to go outside much after for the following, you know, up until this exact second when we're still not able to go out, but like we're at least able to practice and stuff. But like and then once the world reopened with masks a little bit, we were set up to like go back to his studio, and there were a couple instances where like he went to Florida and it was like wild in Florida, so he was like, I don't feel comfortable having you in. That delayed it, and then we all got COVID. Like, we were only seeing each other, but somehow we got COVID.
That's the strange thing, yeah.
That knocked us out for 2 weeks at least, and then it was slow, feeling comfortable getting back together. So, long story short, really delayed the process. We finally got it done. So we have the EP finished and mastered by Pete Zen. He's an awesome producer we've been working with. New single is set. It will be out after we release this, right? It's coming out this upcoming Friday, February 5th. So I think it'll be out by this time. So Too Late Tom will be out, and then we have another single, and then dropping the EP in May, I believe. So just very excited to finally have some music out. And you know, the whole recording process was a little bit wild just because there were so many changes. Pete started out in like a basement studio, and then he moved into more of a traditional studio building that he's sharing with some other people, so we had to go back to re-record some parts, and then he was redoing some stuff with the guitars, helping them get some warmer sounds. He had some amps that he was able to, like, it was a wild process, but you know, he took some time, and all of those little changes really did pay a huge difference. So like when you hear the song that we're releasing, or that will have been released, it sounds a lot different than the first version of Harold that we have. So like, I think over time it didn't come out as fast as we would have liked it to, but we were able to really evolve our sound as a band and evolve the sound of the final product in the studio, that it's a lot better than it would have been if it was just like, all right, we finished this by April of last year and dropped it. It's like, it you know, it feels like it's worth the wait.
Exactly. Yeah, no, that's really cool, man. Yeah, so for those who don't know, Pete actually sent me the masters a couple, like maybe a month ago or something, and I got to listen to the EP in full, and it is really good. Like, I must commend you and the boys, because
thanks, man.
It was a fun listen. I even, I showed, I think, Kayla, and my brother-in-law, Sean, I showed a couple people, and they were like, this is cool. Like, this is really cool,
Hell yeah.
And I'm really glad that you guys are dropping "Too Late Tom" as like one of the main singles, because that was the one that I picked out when I heard it. I was like, yo, like that's the song.
It's 2 a.m. again. Toss and turn, the pages burning in my head again. Cool side of the pillows drenched in sweat again. Heaviness pushing down a wave soaking in my brain. Lately, from 4 to 6, I'll lie awake and ponder everything from atom bombs to where did my space go wrong. Let's go till 8:15. Thanks again, my friend. Anxiety, at least for now, I can write this song. 3 a.m. again. Torpedoes locked and loaded for my head again. Every thought escapes the wasteland it's embedded in. Never-ending panic, mindless manic between the sheets. Lately, from 4 to 6, I'll lie awake and ponder everything from atom bombs to where did my space go wrong. Let's go till 8:15. Thanks again, my friend. Anxiety, at least for now, I can write this song. Fading, breaking, introspective contemplating. My brain is too blank. Tell me, where did I go wrong? Fading, breaking, counting sheep is so frustrating. Time stands in place, every minute drags along. Lately, from 4 to 6, I'll lie awake and ponder everything from atom bombs to where did my space go wrong. Also till 8:15. Thanks again, my friend. Anxiety, at least for now, I can write this song. But I can't take no more. I can't take no more. But I can't take no more. From 4 to 6, lie awake and
Like that was my favorite out of all of them.
Oh yeah, thanks, man. Yeah, it's like I don't know. It's been kind of tough starting this, especially with the whole COVID thing. It's
Yeah.
been tough to start up a band. There's so much more going on that's more important, and it's like tough for well-known bands and bands that have been around to survive through this. So how do you get started? It's difficult, and then the other part of the process that's been difficult is I had friends who listened to Above the Mendoza who really like that, and anytime you come out with a different name of a project, it's not always that easy to recapture or people's attention to listen to that, even if they're your friend. They're like, I liked Above the Mendoza, but like, I don't know if I'm going to like this one. And just really getting them to give it a chance and hear. There are elements of that, like it's definitely still pop punk. It's still that style where like you can hear those Wonder Years influences, but it's just the three of us come together and we're very good at meshing together our different sounds to get a unique sound. So I think that's where it's a little bit different than Above the Mendoza. But I think if you liked Above the Mendoza, you'll like My Cousin's Girlfriend's House.
Right on.
I think that's a statement. I don't know if you would agree with that statement, and you can prove me wrong right now and say it's not the case.
It's the worst music I've ever heard. No, man, I'm kidding. No, it's really good. I definitely do think, like you said, it has those like undertones of Mendoza and the Wonder Years and that kind of stuff. But it's like, you know, I mean, I love the Above the Mendoza stuff, but I think also it's like a step up. Like it almost sounds like, I don't know, like if Above the Mendoza was high school, this almost sounds like, you know, life after high school. You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah, you know, it definitely has been a process, and, you know, we can talk more about it, like after talking about the band, but just like the end of Above the Mendoza into this, there was just a period of time where music wasn't a thing. I was trying to forget music. I was trying to move on to something, say, you know, kind of like the case where, like, if it's someone in high school, it's like, all right, I'm done being high school me. Like, I have to find my new identity, whatever. It was kind of like that. And the end of the story is there was no point without music being a thing. And I was able to find some friends who we started jamming before I left for North Carolina. And once I came back, it was like, let's actually do this, guys, and really dedicated a lot of time to trying to improve as a musician and as a songwriter, and like get back to having fun playing music.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's the one thing I think I talk to people a lot about is, like, you know, when you stop having fun with music, it's like just a grind to get through. So it's important to keep it fun. Like, you know, I don't know, I can't remember if I touched on it in the Union Coffee Break episode, but like I talked about how, you know, after there was like that one album I did a few years ago, Solitude, like the real screamy one. Yeah. And like I put that out, and then like after that it just felt like an arms race with like other people I knew to like, oh, I got to put music out before them. And it's like a really immature take to have on things, but like that made music not fun for me. And not only that, like trying to play shows with people and like trying to find band members, and like I'd get a band and then people would drop out, and then like it just didn't work. It became really frustrating for me. And so like I think I took it a little too seriously. So like I think now personally, like what I try and do, like I started, you know, the lo-fi stuff that I'm doing right now. You can check it out on Spotify, Halo. There's a couple tunes up, but it's, you know, it's really easy. Like that stuff just comes easy to me. And I just sit down with my tablet and just be like, all right, let's see how many weird sounds we can fit in this song, you know? So like it's good to just, you know, be laid back about any type of art, really, because the more you force it, like I said, the more of a drag it becomes. I don't know, I guess that's my end of rant on that.
Yeah. No, I mean, I have 2 points off that before we move on or whatever, continue on about music, whatever, but on that point, the first is that it is a fine line between having fun and taking it serious. And I feel like we touched on this last time when we did the one with Aaron, but just really finding that balance between, you know, having fun and taking it serious. And like, it's totally cool if you want to just have fun and not take it serious at all. And like, if it's just a for fun thing, awesome. That if you're going to do only one thing, that's what you have to do. You can't just take it seriously and hate it. It's like anything. If you take it serious and hate it, it's not going to be fun. Yeah. So if you do want to take it serious, it's about finding that balance and hitting that perfect point. And that's where I feel like I'm at right now, where it's like, and where we're at as a band, it's like we take it serious enough, but it's always just having fun while playing, which is awesome. And the second thing is, I double down on listening to your lo-fi because I have to say, I'm embarrassed to admit it, I never really even thought of lo-fi as musicians. Yeah. Like, I've just never even put the two together. It's just like, okay, lo-fi study beats. I have to read something, lo-fi study beats. I have to focus on something, lo-fi study beats. Like, yeah. I can't read a book unless I'm either in dead silence or listening to lo-fi study beats. So you guys are my favorite musicians now that I have connected that it's music. It's not just, I mean, it's always been studying music, but it's like, okay, I don't just want sounds that are going to be soothing. I want musical sounds that are going to be soothing and allow my brain to escape and just focus on the task at hand.
Well, it's funny, like, if you would have asked me 10 years ago, like, or if you would have went back in time and said to me, like, hey, at 22, 23 years old, you're going to be making electronic music. I would have been like, that stuff sucks. Like, I would have been like, that's not talent. That's just pressing buttons on a keyboard. Which, I mean, to an extent it is, but, like, you need to know, like, theory, you know, at least, like, basic theory. You need to know, like, what sounds good together. It's literally not just, like, punching things in and, like, making something.
Dude, so, that's funny that you say that, because I don't know theory very well. So essentially what I do is just punch stuff in, but on the instruments. But I also thought, like, I always had been saying, like, I don't like electronic music. It's just, I've said that before, but it's like, there's different kinds of electronic music, and a lot of it's really good. So it's like,
yeah.
Like, I wouldn't consider study beats to have been electronic music. They're study beats, but now that I know they have a name, I think it's fantastic music.
Now I have to make a song for you called Study Beats.
Thank you. I will definitely, even though I'm not a student anymore, I consider my work studies, and anytime I'm trying to read something, maybe I'll listen to it while I study guitar and music theory so I can become a better musician.
Oh, man.
Help me out there.
Let's jump back really quick before we get into the birds. So you guys have your release ready to go. The world seems to be hopefully trending in an upward slope right now. Once all of this stuff clears up and, you know, you guys are able to start playing shows again, you know, and just really getting out there into the public as a band, what is on the horizon for you guys? What are your plans?
Man,
as soon as you're able to?
That makes me both so excited to hear and so nervous to hear, because I haven't played a show in like 2.5 years or something.
Yeah.
So, but, you know, right now we're just focused on finishing I guess we finished the EP, but promoting it and getting it out there and getting that first release out by May, and then setting up a few like acoustic sessions where it's like, it's not live or it's not like a show, but it can be like a professionally, like the sound quality is that of if you were at a show. So like an acoustic session like that, maybe a full band session like that, until we can actually play shows. And then we actually already have a few songs in the works for a second EP, and I think I'm just excited to get this EP out so we can get the second stuff roaring, because we're meshing a lot as a band, and at that stage where it's like we get each other, we can, you know, bounce ideas off each other, and the sound is really starting to sound like a collective three of us together, as opposed to like working out stuff in the first EP. So we're excited to already get back into the studio for that stuff. And then, you know, once shows start, we still need a drummer. So if anybody wants to be a live show drummer, and we're searching, but, you know, once those are back, you better believe we'll be there playing them.
Absolutely.
Zero people or a gajillion. We'll be playing.
That's awesome. Well, you can at least count on one, because I'll be there somewhere at some point in time.
Hell yeah. We're going to do a combined tour, lo-fi pop punk. Just the craziest bill ever to go on.
Yeah, it'll be like, I'll open and people will come in, and it'll just me like pressing one key on my tablet, you know, like, all right, everyone here, and I start the beat, and I just press one key, and then you guys come on, and, you know, I put everyone to sleep, and then you guys come out and wake everyone back up again.
Yeah, I was gonna say, it's like we trick them in with some chill vibes. They're like, oh, this seems like a chill place to hang and vibe and talk, and then we're like, what's up, we're pop punk. Scare the shit out of them, but they're in there already, so they might as well listen.
Yeah, there you go, man. Oh, man, that's awesome. I can't wait. I can't wait to, you know, have like the EP. Where are you guys going to be uploading that? I'm assuming like everywhere. Bandcamp, Spotify, SoundCloud.
So we got Spotify. We have all the streaming services, really. iTunes. I don't know, Apple Music, I guess, and everything else that it goes out to. We'll probably throw it up on Bandcamp as well. I don't think we've been putting the original releases up on SoundCloud. We just, when we were doing those acoustic covers, we'll throw those up there, but SoundCloud for the most part does not have the originals. So, and then YouTube, you know, we're going to try and knock out another, we have the Tom music video, and then we think we're going to do another one for one more single. So you can find us on YouTube as well, and then all the normal social medias and Instagram, Facebook, Twitter.
Right on. Super cool. Everyone go follow My Cousin's Girlfriend's House. Check out their music. Too Late Time, you heard it here on the Fueled by Coffee podcast. And if you like what you heard, go give them a follow. Go support them. Yeah, they got bright things on the horizon.
Sure.
But now, let's go from bright horizons
to the absolute dog shit.
Let's go to the worst things. Where do we even start? So the Philadelphia Eagles.
So much fun. There were some positive vibes going on, and here we are now. It just feels like it is dumping rain.
Study beats.
It's the only way we're getting through this.
So for those who don't know, for those who didn't listen to the first episode, Pete used to run a podcast called Flying High Pod. It was about the Philadelphia Eagles and other Philadelphia sports. So he is well versed in the sports ball talk. So this should be fun.
Sports ball.
But our Philadelphia Eagles, if I was optimistic going into the 2020 season, I was excited we even got a 2020 season, and then I don't know, like one loss. Okay, so for those who aren't football fans, you may care, you may not care, but the Eagles lost their first.
We'll talk about the Carson Wentz thing at some point, and that's what the people who are just listening for the Carson Wentz storyline, who only don't pay attention on a daily basis or sorts. Like, we'll get to that, but first let's talk about the real pain.
I'll throw some timestamps in on the description. If you're on SoundCloud, you hit behind the track, and I'll put timestamps in so y'all can jump around if you want. So, the real pain. What is the real pain for you?
Right now or this past season?
Okay, well, let's start at the beginning of the season. Because when we did the last episode, we weren't even in training camp yet. Like, right. It was like even pre-draft, I think.
Yeah, this is before Jalen Hurts, right?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, do we want to start all the way back at the draft? Because I can tell you my thoughts about the draft this past year, and I don't like it.
Give me a synopsis.
Okay, so night one is first round, and I'm watching the picks go, and I'm like, man, CeeDee Lamb is really close to the Cowboys. I swear to God, if the Eagles don't try and trade up to get him, and they let the Cowboys pick him, I am going to break something. And what happened, Matt? What happened?
CeeDee Lamb was drafted by the Cowboys. Do you think Jerry Jones did it to spite the Eagles?
Absolutely. And even if he didn't intentionally, I'm going to say that I believe he did, because it's too coincidental.
Well, I mean,
they had a lot of good receivers already.
I mean, CeeDee Lamb wanted to wear number 10, and he made him wear 88. Jerry Jones is just selfish.
Yeah, that goes without saying, Matt, but I just was like, I hope Howie's never done anything good on draft day ever, but I was really hoping this time that he worked out a trade. I'm like, there has to be some team up there that you can give somebody to, because what is the only position, not the only position, but what is the one position that was just painful the year prior to last? It was the wide receiver position. And when you're coming back thinking, all right, Greg Ward's my top guy probably, and J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, that guy we drafted, he doesn't even exist really. And that's a whole nother thing. Every time I watch DK Metcalf catch a ball, or anytime his name is called, I want to bash my head against a wall because we could have had him. But aside from that, I just couldn't believe that they didn't try and make a trade. And then when they didn't try and make a trade, they picked Jalen Reagor over Jefferson from LSU. I was perplexed. I still am. I don't know, man. And this could go so much further in depth, but I didn't think they needed a Jalen Reagor style player. Whether he's better than what his numbers say, whatever, he's like a Deshaun Jackson-esque, he's got speed kind of guy, where it's like, I would like a bigger guy that's a mix of Deshaun Jackson and Alshon Jeffrey, where he can get up and just get over anybody and catch like a jump ball, but he also has that speed and that quick agility. And maybe that's asking too much, but I see they exist. They are in the draft every year. It just seems to be that the Eagles don't pick that one.
It's funny. The night of the draft, I had to work, so I had to go to bed super early. I was only able to see the first 6 picks, and then I remember waking up. It was like 1:30 in the morning. I was like, all right, I got to see who the Eagles picked. And then I was expecting it to be either CeeDee Lamb or Justin Jefferson, and then I opened Twitter and I'm like, Jalen Reagor, like I didn't even know he existed until 1 a.m. the day after the draft. I was like, what? I mean, I was willing to give him a chance. I watched his highlights. I was like, all right, this could be cool. But I don't know, man. I'm hoping he blows up this coming season because I do believe in him. I do think he just needs good quarterback play, but we'll get to that in a little bit.
Yeah, I do believe in him, and I think I don't know how you feel about this year's draft, but I think they need to go receiver again with that pick.
I have thoughts.
So, I think if they bring in another really talented wide receiver and you have two really young, talented wide receivers, there's a chance that Jalen Reagor can be a good player.
Have you been paying attention to my late night donut frying hot takes on Twitter?
Dude, I've seen a few of them. I saw one about Julio Jones, I believe. There was a hot take in there. I don't know if I agree with that take, but, hot takes while you're making hot donuts, Matt, I'm all about them. And I see them the next morning because I'm not up when you have the actual hot takes.
Exactly. Well, that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to supply people with a nice little, man. Some food
Something
for thought
to wake
when they
up to. Yeah.
Some shower
You're providing
thoughts.
us food for actual food and food for thought. You're the greatest baker in the history of the universe.
Oh, well, thank you very much. That compliment will go a long way, I'm sure. But so this season was a huge letdown. It was just loss after loss once it started. And like after one loss, you think like, okay, they can bounce back. And then two losses, you're like, all right, they just got to right the ship. And then once it compounds into, 9 losses, 10 losses, you're like, okay, this team is absolute trash. Like, would you compare this to the 2012 season? Would you say this was as big a letdown as 2012 when they supposedly had like the dream team?
I mean, I almost think that this was worse. And it's tough because that one, it was like you're supposed to have the dream team and they just suck. This year it was like, well, we really suck, but for some reason all the other teams in the NFC East also really suck. So no matter how bad we're really sucking, somehow we're still in it. And then we do something like, win a game we're not supposed to, and it's just like, man, now we're really in it. Like, we've lost a lot that we should have won, but now we somehow pulled this one off. All we got to do is what? Was it going to Arizona and win? Was what we is that was the final,
That was like the nail in the coffin, yeah.
And it was like we competed with them, They're a good team. We competed with them, and it's just like I don't understand that team with not a lot of talent at times. Injuries really plagued them, but you cannot knock them. I don't know. You can, because sometimes it's like, why didn't you guys show up? But then they show up at these moments when you think they're done, and it's like, ugh, I can't hate you guys because you're good.
Yeah, and it's really frustrating too to see like just how much drama has gone on. Like, I feel like every few days, every weekend, there's like a new article that comes out about either Carson Wentz or the owners or in the GM. Like, it's just something new. And then like just Wentz, I think, was a huge problem. Like, it's just so strange to me. So this episode is called FOLES Syndrome, and I'm naming it that because it seems like every time Carson Wentz gets benched or goes down with an injury, whoever comes in at quarterback to replace him
plays better,
infinitely better than he ever did. I mean, maybe not ever, but than he's currently doing at that moment. Like, Nick Foles did it twice. Jalen Hurts did it this year, and I remember thinking,
Josh
like,
McCown did it last year in the playoff game, man.
I have a picture of that man hanging on my wall because of what he did.
Like, come on.
But seriously, like, it was one of those things where, like, all season I was like, I got to be loyal to Wentz. I can't abandon him. But then it got to the point where I was like, I just want to see Hurts. I just want to see what he can do. Because my cousin, who lives in Alabama, he saw Hurts go through, like, his college career, and he was telling me, like, man, Carson Wentz is a dud compared to Jalen Hurts. Like, I'm sorry, but... And I was like, nah, dude, like, you're not an Eagles fan. You don't know. Like, you like the Steelers. But... I had to drop that in there. Sorry, Anthony. But no, like, then when they finally put Hurts in, and he looked like just phenomenal. Like, he took down the Saints, the #1 defense in the league at the time.
That was one of those games where you're just like, could you guys just lose that so I can, like, not have to hope so much? Like, it's been an exhausting season of hoping and, like, actively rooting for bad things. Like, they're so bad, but everybody else was so bad that we could just be the least worst.
Yeah. I mean, the Eagles are now the worst. They've gone down in history as the worst team in the worst division in NFL history.
Man, I think Eagles Nation is in trouble as a fan base because we're split, and Carson has split the fan base into two sides. Maybe it's more than just Carson, but there's two sides of the organization. One is, very critical, and one is, critical in a different way. It's funny. It's like two different types of criticism. It's either they destroyed Wentz or Wentz destroyed them.
Do you think the reports that have come out, they're not direct reports from Wentz, they've all been like anonymous sources, but do you think that they're true about him having a big head?
I think to some degree they have to be. The last one that dropped, I wasn't sure, but this one was like Jeff McClain, who's like not just any schmuck writing a hate piece. It's like, obviously there's some sort of substance to it. And it's weird because when I watched, the way he acted with Jalen Hurts on the field and stuff, he actually looked like he was being supportive and a good teammate. But just like, I don't know, the way he responded to stuff in press conferences, it always just felt like he was there with a script, and it's, just his act. And I'm not saying that he's not a good teammate, but he as well as everybody in the Eagles organization and pretty much all football organizations around the world have a script when they go up to the podium, and you're not getting their true thoughts in like press conferences. So his always just felt especially scripted, and it was going to be the same thing, and it was just a plethora of excuses and stuff, and always saying we have to take accountability, but never really owning up or like, I don't know.
What do you think is to blame for his regression? Do you think it is the lack of a quarterbacks coach who's pushing him? Do you think it's the lack of an offensive coordinator? Like, what do you think it's special treatment from the front office? What do you think his regression is a cause of?
So I have this underlying theory, and I've never really, I've said it to a few people behind closed doors because I could get accused of not being a true Eagles fan if I give this theory out, but I've already said that I have a theory, so now I must say it, right?
Hot takes.
Hot take coming out here. I think that the Philadelphia Eagles have been trying to save their ass ever since they drafted Carson. I think, they made a mistake trading up in a draft that wasn't really quarterback heavy. Like, if it's between Jared Goff, a Cal quarterback who, you don't watch because the Pac-12 games they're on too late, or a guy from North Dakota State who played with, and I don't want to be mistaken here, but I believe it's the same division as Lehigh for football. They're like Division 1 AA or whatever. Like,
yeah.
They're not even a mid-major. They're not even a low Division 1. They're Division 1 AA.
Mm-hmm.
When those are the two quarterbacks that are the top two, should we really be trading up? Are we that desperate? I mean, first off, they traded Foles way back to get Sam Bradford. Maybe if we just kept Foles, we'd have been better off. But anyways, ever since that pick where they picked Wentz, I think Carson was the savior of the city, and the team bought into that before he ever played, a snap.
Mm-hmm.
And he played that first year was whatever. It was a bad year for the team in general. But the next year they had a really good team, and that's when they won the Super Bowl. And he was playing awesome. And yes, he was playing MVP level. But as we watched him regress ever since then, really, there's been a bunch of theories, but perhaps number one should be that the team was that good when he was doing well that they could win a Super Bowl with anybody at quarterback, because all the parts were right. The defense was right. The offense was right. It just was right and was a true team, as opposed to like a quarterback around making a team better. It was the team making the quarterback better. But ever since then, it's always been, oh no, Carson didn't win the Super Bowl, but we're going to credit him with it. And like, yeah, thank you, Foles, but we're going to give Carson the majority of the credit that he got us to where he got us. and we're going to call him the guy. And since then, when he's been the guy, he hasn't played well. But instead of like, I don't know, I feel like they're at a point where it's like they shouldn't have signed him when they signed him. They had one more year to, see if he could show the kind of player he really is. And, he hasn't shown to this point, and granted injuries and lack of talent, whatever you want to call it, but they're just continuing to back their guy because they would never admit that they made a mistake, just like the Sixers wouldn't admit that Markelle Fultz was a mistake until many years later.
Well, that was actually, yeah, so to double back just a slight bit, yeah, like the past couple seasons with his injuries, like at first it was, oh, well, he's not 100% because of his knee. And then it was, oh, well, he's had a back issue for half the season. And then, like, he came in last year and he seemed to be redeeming himself. Like, he set a passing record for the Eagles franchise, like in terms of passing yards, I think. And, he seemed to really, like, rally the team in Nick Foles fashion, if I may say so. But now it's like, what's the excuse? Like, you'd think he would have been like, no pun intended, flying high going into 2020. So, like, what's the excuse now? He was healthy all year,
I mean, the excuse now is a lack of talent around him, but I see a lot of quarterbacks. I see a Tom Brady style quarterback. I see even an Aaron Rodgers, those type of guys. It doesn't, like, they might not always have the team around them, but they're able to take these players who are not star players and have them perform like star players.
Yeah. No, that's exactly it.
And here's my biggest thing is that, when we're saying, oh, he's getting sacked, he's getting pressured, the offensive line's just not there. They were very injured. There were a lot of different offensive lineups throughout the year, but a lot of the sacks and fumbles that I see are hesitation, are either thinking too much in the pocket or like not seeing the field. It's like, you have to get the ball out quickly, and if you double pump, that's what leads to those annoying sacks turned into fumble, turned into the team has the other ball, or the other team has the ball, turned into possibly a touchdown or something. Just like constantly hesitating. Those sacks are not always caused by an offensive line that's struggling.
Yeah, and before we move to the next point, along with what you said, I do think it is the Eagles organization not wanting to admit they made a mistake. People would ask me, like, well, why didn't they start Hurts sooner, or why didn't they keep Foles? And I always tell them, like, it's because they gave up so much draft stock to get Wentz. That's what I've always said too. Yeah. So I agree with you on that.
And they drafted a quarterback at number 2, marketed him to the world as the next big thing in Philly, and you know how Philly fans are. They latch on. So we all latched on to him, and all was good and great, but then I feel like it became, some people latched onto him so much that they were not able to see his faults and whatnot, and some people are still there. Now they're saying that the Eagles ruined him, whatever it may be. But like, I don't know, man. I think it's dangerous to make one player larger than the team, because that often turns into something where the quarterback stays over a head coach who had led them to the playoffs for 3 consecutive years before this year.
Did you see the Malcolm Jenkins interview that came out today?
I did not.
An interview came out with Malcolm Jenkins, and they asked him about the Wentz situation, and he said that from what he saw, he said that him and Carson are friends. He loves Carson, but he said he feels like they gave him too much space to like they didn't pressure him enough to like make him fix his faults and his mistakes to make him a better player. He said they weren't pushing him to be a better player. They were just kind of like
coddling him,
holding his hand. Yeah, exactly.
Which is why I believe the article that came out this year when they're saying that it's not his coaches. He thinks that his coaches work for him or something. It kind of feels like he feels entitled as the quarterback, which you wouldn't think based off the personality that he has. Exactly. You wouldn't think that it would come to that. But perhaps on the field, he's just that competitive that he's like, well, it's competition, but it's also like not competition to be like, I'm so good I don't, like, this team is mine. I don't have to worry.
One thing, too, like, watching all of the other games this season, like, I just feel like watching the Eagles, they look like they're playing, like, peewee football. And then, like, the other teams look like they're playing with so much, like, passion and energy and just, like, fire. Like, I remember watching the Chiefs and the Ravens on Monday Night Football early in the season, and like those dudes were just like, they were running the ball super hard, and like you could tell they wanted to win. And then you watch the Eagles, and it's just like, it looks like a sad excuse of a team.
Yeah,
it's
sad when you put it that way, but yeah,
it's like any other team I've watched. It's just like, why can't they play with that kind of fire?
I feel like the fact that I had to preface my theory with this big thing about how like I've never told anybody and this might get me hated is why I fear for the Eagles fan base, because and I guess it's both sides are guilty, because whether you're Team Foles or Team Wentz, you've picked a player over the organization.
To move, I guess, sort of in that direction with picking a quarterback. I mean, like you said about one of the excuses being Wentz doesn't have enough talent around him. And like you'd see it, I don't know if this was just me seeing this, but it looked like the whole time Wentz was playing with Alshon Jeffrey, which, by the way, why was he active for like 9 weeks or inactive for 9 weeks and like not on IR? That was just ridiculous. Like, and they didn't let Quez Watkins play, who could have easily, like, I think Watkins is better than John Hightower. That's just my opinion. Well, like, look at Jeffrey. Like, he looked like he was giving no effort whenever Wentz is on the field. And then, like, whenever Foles would come in, that was, like, his guy. Or, like, when Hurts came in, he's just slinging it to Alshon Jeffrey for touchdowns. And just, like, I just think that the offense reacts differently to Wentz. That's just my personal...
Yeah, I don't know. I really can't understand it, because... And maybe that's where it comes to the point where I don't know technical football and being able to watch film and understand why things are happening. Mm-hmm. That's where it comes in, that I don't know as well as some people who are saying Wentz is still that guy. I don't know. Like, a lot of people who make the argument that that the Eagles have ruined Wentz are people who know their football. So, like, I don't know the technical aspects of football to watch a tape and be like, that guy still has, opportunity. Or like,
if you look at guys like Foles or Hurts, like, they're not afraid to just sling it and trust the receiver that they're going to catch it. Like, a perfect example, Hurts against the Cardinals. He's like just slinging balls like in Patrick Peterson's direction, who's a phenomenal corner, and like he's not fearing him. It's almost like Wentz is like fearing the defense instead of just trusting his guys to get the job done. Maybe that's part of the issue. Maybe they're like frustrated with him because he's not just trusting them. I don't know. Like, maybe, I don't know, man.
I don't know, but all I have to say is it's a difficult spot for someone who has wanted to support Wentz since he was drafted,
mm-hmm.
and then feels as if Wentz hasn't exactly earned the trust and the love of, or just like that worship of the fans that he has. So you're always like, anytime I've said I love Nick Foles, or like I could see how they could keep Foles over Wentz, it's like you have to preface it with like, but I do believe in Wentz, because like it's like you want to see him do well, but when it keeps ending poorly, and you keep seeing that blind trust and faith and like just investment into him. That's the only way we can put it, is that they have invested. It's not just, Carson, we believe you're the starter. Like, we'll tell you, like, we're going to guarantee you're the starter. No, it's like, here's a lot of money for a lot of years that is going to make it hard for us to get good talent around you unless we draft well, and we don't draft well. That's my final thought on the quarterback situation.
That's a good segue. Speaking of drafting, where do the Eagles go from here? Now, one thing we haven't really mentioned is the firing of Doug Peterson. And I know you're probably going to... I think you and I have briefly texted about it, about being unhappy with them cutting him loose after one bad season. Because look at some guy... Like, my example was... and this may be a little extreme. Hugh Jackson with the Browns. He had 2 whole seasons where he didn't win one game, or he may have won like one game in out of 32 games, and like they, after 1 year you'd think they'd be like, all right, man, you lost every game, you're out of here. But they're like, no, we'll give you another chance. Doug Peterson has one bad year after making the playoffs for 3 or 4 years, winning a Super Bowl, and they just they get rid of him. I think it's that was the worst birthday present I could have ever gotten. That news broke on my birthday.
Happy belated birthday, Matt. I'm sorry I didn't wish you a happy birthday on the day. I was
you're good, man. No,
too upset.
I woke up from my post-work slumber, and I literally opened Twitter, and I was like, wait, why is Doug Peterson trending? And then when I saw they let him go, I was like, Okay. All right. Now I'm not excited for football anymore.
Yeah.
Like this is awful.
I almost feel Doug Peterson was brought in. He had one mediocre year, and then boom, Super Bowl. Boom. Like one should have been catch away from possibly being back in the NFC Championship. Boom. We're in the playoffs, and we almost won the game with an old guy, McCown, with a torn hamstring right off the bone or whatever it is. But like 3 of his first 4 years, he makes the playoffs, and then he barely misses in a year where the entire NFC East is trash. It's like there had to be more to it. And I heard some rumblings that he actually wanted out because they wouldn't give him the control he wanted in terms of like making moves with the coaching staff, or management was too tight with he didn't just let the coach like be the coach that he wanted to be.
So they have since hired a coach, Nick Sirianni from the Indianapolis Colts. How do you feel about this hire? I think for me, it personally rejuvenated a little bit of hope, because watching the Colts this past season, their offense was effective. I loved their use of Jonathan Taylor, not just because he was on my fantasy team, but no, just the fact that they ran the ball. He made Phillip Rivers look good. That kind of restored a little bit of my faith, because if you look at his track record, he had Andrew Luck, who came off of some horrible injuries, and he got great production out of him. He had to then switch really quickly to Jacoby Brissett after Andrew Luck retired, and he got good production out of him. And then he took Phillip Rivers, who's 1,000 years old, and just played his last season of football, and he got good production out of him.
So I think it's interesting that you were rejuvenated, right away, whereas I saw that hire and I was like, Jesus Christ, they've picked the one guy who I wouldn't want. Like, there's
really,
I mean.
Would you rather Josh McDaniels?
I don't know. I don't know about that, but there were a lot of qualified people. I really wanted to see Deuce Staley get it. I know he hadn't been a coordinator yet or whatnot, but he should have been the coordinator probably by this point, and was by far the most invested coach on that staff.
I do feel bad for Deuce. I was hoping that he would have been the hire, but I knew he wasn't going to be, because that would make Jeffrey Lurie and Howie Roseman look hypocritical. Because the reports were that Peterson wanted to hire or promote from within, and that's part of the reason why they let him go. And so I feel like if they would have promoted Deuce to the head coaching job, even though he was so qualified and he had all these endorsements, that would have made them look like a couple of hypocrites, because that would have been promoting from within. I love you, Deuce Staley. Please sponsor me. I actually have a Deuce Staley jersey.
There you go. But I have to close this coaching section out with, I believe in Nick Sirianni.
Me too.
I'll give him a shot, but I just don't know. It's starting to sound like I'm a Cowboys fan, but I just don't know if this management is able to do it. Sure, Doug Peterson has made some dumb decisions, has made us scratch our heads, but
he's by no means a patron saint.
But you know what he has done is he has taken some really shoddy draft fields. They've brought him talent, and he's like, how did you bring me this group of talent with the picks you had? That's the best you could do. And he's made it work somehow. Whether it is kicking them into gear halfway through the season, that seemed to happen quite a bit. It was they've started off poorly, but Doug's going to kick them into gear. I think the 2 years after the Super Bowl win, that was the narrative both years. But it's he had something where he was able to get his players to play when they wanted to. So I have to wonder why they weren't able to do that this year.
I'm glad that you left it on that. My theory is that there's a lack of leadership, or there was a lack of leadership, because there was no Malcolm Jenkins. If you look at the years that he played, and he was always the one giving the pregame speeches. It wasn't Carson being the leader of the team, It was Malcolm Jenkins up there firing everyone up, and he was on every play on defense just about, and he was I feel like I've seen some mic'd ups where he was holding guys accountable, and now that there was that absence, there was almost there was just a void, and there was no one there to fill that role of being a leader.
I think somebody's going to have to pick that up that isn't Wentz, because he doesn't strike me as the guy who's going to do that.
So now let's close out the depressing Eagles talk. I think this episode is dropping a couple 6 days, 7 days before the draft.
Ooh.
So let's talk about draft prediction, like not even just predictions, but like where do you think we should use that number 6 overall pick in the first round? Okay, so for me, these are my thoughts. I think if Devontae Smith is still there, the Heisman winner, I think we need to go with him. But then, because like you said earlier in the episode, we need that good, like, number 1, really talented receiver that we don't currently have. But another part of me feels like, say Devontae Smith gets taken, say Jamar Chase gets taken, I feel like we need someone on the other side of the field from Darius Slay, and I feel like they should take Patrick Surtain. I think he's from Alabama.
Mm-hmm.
He's a corner from Alabama. I don't know necessarily if he's an outside corner or if he's a slot, but I think if he's an outside corner, that would be a really good young defensive talent that they could develop and then have someone to help lock the field down, because I feel like that's been an issue for as long as the time I started watching again. That was a huge issue. And now that they got Slay, who was, I would say, really, pretty good this past year.
He was solid.
They need someone, he could learn under Slay and then eventually take the reins, and he could be like that lockdown guy. That's my personal take. Try for receiver first, but I think, if that fails, just go for a corner.
Yeah, I'm about the same. I'm all about Smith and Chase, as if they're available, get them, because they're the best that are going to be. They're like top quality, worth a top 10 pick. And then after that, it does come down to what do we really need? Because what we need is like a I won't say superstar, but a star wide receiver. And if you're not getting those two guys, I don't think you're getting that this year at that position. I do think if you're going to go defense, and I hate to say it because I don't like Alabama, but an Alabama defender is pretty much a sure pick. Like, they are a factory of defensive professionals. Sometimes they hit, sometimes they miss on offense, but look at the best players, on Alabama's team. They're always going to be a solid pro. So I would go with him at corner. But right now, I'm just so in on we need a wide receiver. We need Smith or Chase. Do what it takes to get them. I mean, I'll have my popcorn ready. It's going to be an interesting night. Any draft night, for the Eagles is an interesting night and usually a letdown. So I'd come prepared.
That's enough of the depressing Eagles talk. Love the Eagles through and through. They're allowed to have a bad season. That was the one thing that I think was really frustrating for me. So this was my first year being in a fantasy football league, and I talk about that on the next episode. But in my fantasy football league, I was basically the laughingstock of the league for being an Eagles fan. When, in reality, we had 3 Steelers fans who were talking shit the whole time because they're 11-0, whatever, 10-0, and
that is a franchise currently living in the past.
Yeah. So, like within the league, just to run down, we had 3 Steelers fans, we had a Cowboys fan who was just as sad as I was. We have a Raiders fan, we have a Chiefs fan.
Of course.
Oh, and a Bills fan. But my point being is just I was the laughingstock of the fantasy league. And I remember I sent a meme out. It was like week 5. The Steelers had beaten the Texans, the Eagles. They'd beaten 4 teams that had only won 1 game each. And I sent this meme out of a gorilla beating its chest, and it was Steelers beating their chest over, we're 4-0 or we're 5-0 or whatever. And then a couple weeks later, it comes back around, and the one guy who's a Steelers fan, he was like, "Oh, we're 10-0 now. Where's that picture that you sent earlier in the season?" And then they lost 3 games in a row or something like that.
I know when Steelers fans need to let go of Big Ben, and Big Ben needs to let go of football. That's their problem. They have some great players on that team, and I don't like the Steelers, but they have some good players.
Oh,
and
yeah.
The reason they're not good is because Big Ben's their quarterback.
Well, I made a comment about him being a fat I called him the fat rectangle cheeseburger. And the response was, he has more rings than your entire franchise.
I mean, true, but
yeah,
cool.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just, it was depressing.
Classic Eagles answer. It's true, but what have you done for me lately?
Let's wrap up this episode with some favorite Eagles memories.
Heck yeah, man.
There were some really, really happy times. For me, I've explained it a couple times, not to give a huge rundown, but basically the synopsis is I grew up liking football as a little kid. I was an Eagles fan. or I had the Donovan McNabb Madden that had him on the cover. Played it religiously. I went to see them at training camp as a little kid. You know, like, I was all in on the Eagles. And then I got into other things as I got older, and I thought sports were stupid, and I had a really immature take on that. But then I got back into them when the Super Bowl rolled around a few years ago, and they were in it. And ever since then, I was like, wow, football is really cool. This is real. It's a nice escape from reality. And I've been back in it ever since. So for me, I mean, my first game back into football was the Super Bowl that the Eagles were in.
Good time to be an Eagles fan.
I know. Well, cause, like, my mom followed it pretty regularly, and I remember her being like, "Oh, they're in the Super Bowl against the Patriots," and like, I'm having like Vietnam flashbacks to when they lost the first time to the Patriots. You know, so like, I had to watch it, and oh man, going back and watching, like, I'll watch like Mic'd Up or NFL films like from the Super Bowl that year, and like, it almost brings me to tears because like I just remember what I felt when they won that game. I was like, oh my god, that was amazing. Like, what was that night like for you? Like,
it was awesome, man. What else is there to say? I mean,
were you in Philly at the time?
I was going to Temple, and it was a Sunday night, so I knew if we won the Super Bowl or if we lost, I would not be going to class the next day. They won the Super Bowl, and I think it was like the moment the ball touched the ground on that, you know, jump. It wasn't really a jump ball, but it was a jump ball for all intents and purposes. I think the minute it hit the ground, I was out the door running down Broad Street. I actually left before all my friends with the very not smart decision of bringing a phone with almost no battery. So my phone died in Center City, and I couldn't contact my friends. And let me tell you, that was a hard night to find your friends in the city because there were a lot of friends around. So I ended up running around the city trying to find people, you know, couldn't find them, and then had to walk back up Broad Street by myself very late in the night, defeated that I couldn't find my friends. Yeah. They were thankful that I made it back, but it was awesome because you could do something like that. You could lose all your friends, and still everybody was just being friends with each other because like the Eagles won the Super Bowl, and the city was just, you know, everybody was enjoying it, and it was nice to see something that could bring an entire city together. No matter what you're feeling, no matter what you believe, everybody was just in there. We've loved the Birds, whether it was since birth or since yesterday, and we're all just friends.
That's awesome. That's really cool. The one other thing I had listed here for me personally was the following season, Nick Foles takes over, makes a run for the playoffs. The game in Chicago.
Double doink?
Double doink. That was like the most accurate way for me to describe being an Eagles fan, is just like having anxiety through every game.
Oh, yeah.
And, I mean, especially late in the season, like, if they're in contention for the playoffs, like, you're literally sitting on the edge of your seat, like, oh, God, like, having heart palpitations, you know, you need a Xanax or something. I don't know, I remember that game being one of those games. It was, like, a 1-point difference, and, you know, the defense blows it, of course. Chicago runs down the field, and they go to kick this field goal, and I remember, like, for those who didn't watch it, basically what happened was the Eagles had one timeout left. If Chicago kicks this field goal and makes it, the Eagles are out. Like, they're done for the year. So what Doug Peterson, Big Balls Doug, did, he iced the kicker. And for those who don't know football slang, icing the kicker is basically right when they're about to kick or they're getting ready to kick a field goal, you call a timeout. And then that, like, gets them out of, like, their focus or out of their headspace. It's like a psychological thing. I don't exactly know how that would directly affect me because I've never been in that situation. I would imagine it's terrifying because you're in front of thousands of people. But yeah, he calls a timeout right as they're about to snap the ball. The guy kicks a perfect field goal, but it doesn't count. So then they have this 30-second timeout, whatever. And he goes to kick the field goal again. And this time, he doesn't miss it. The ball bounces off the goalpost twice and doesn't go through. And I just remember, like, that was one of those moments. My mom and I are sitting there, and he kicks, and it's called the double doink. You can go look it up on YouTube. It's the greatest thing I've ever seen. One of the greatest things I've ever seen. And just, like, I remember we just erupted in just this, like, oh my God. I was, like, on the floor. I was, like, almost crying because I was, like, that was, like, it was just, it's weird how sports can evoke these types of emotions out of people. But it was just, like, for me, that was, like, one of my, like, favorite things to remember because it was so joyous and it just had me on the edge of my seat, and then you could just, like, finally breathe afterwards. Like, I don't know, man.
Yeah. In terms of Eagles memories, I have so many just because, like, since birth, I have been a diehard Eagles fan. Like,
yeah.
My dad would take me to training camp before I even knew who players were. Like, McNabb was my favorite player. Yeah, back at Lehigh.
Yeah, me too. I went once. That was awesome.
We would go, like, every time they came around, we were like those people who it was like, what's the schedule? We're going to go, like, once every 2 days and know what our team is. And so, like, that's pretty cool. So I have so many memories, but two in particular stand out. One was the NFC Championship game against the Vikings. I'm fortunate enough that my dad's a season ticket holder, and during that playoff run, I was like, all right, we made it to the NFC Championship game, and it was my dad's choice. He has some friends who he splits the tickets with, so, like, his friend had the first game, and, like, he had the NFC Championship game, and he had gone in the past, but, like, this time it was either we were going as a family or he was going to sell them, and it was such a tough choice, and I was just like, Dad, and I know this had happened before for him. Like, they've been back when Andy Reid took him to 3 in a row. Like, NFC Championship games are no strange place for an Eagles fan, but when did they ever go to the Super Bowl? But for some reason, I was like, I can feel that this is going to be a good year. It's not going to be the same. We could sell the tickets and do whatever with it, but money is not a thing here. It's more like we have to experience this. So we went to that game, and sure enough, it was the one where it was like, nothing good was happening. It looked awful. And then all of a sudden they had a pick six on freaking, what the heck was it? Case Keenum was the quarterback. And that pick six came, like, right into our corner. And then from there on out, it was just like the FOLES show and the flea flicker. So that game was awesome. Never forget.
What was it like seeing the flea flicker in person?
Unrealistic. It's just like, what? What? It was all just, like, perfect. Like, and to run that back, I know that was just a lot of what's, but it's like, first, what? They're doing a flea flicker. Second, what? They're going deep. Third, what? He's catching the ball. Fourth, what? He's inbounds and it's a touchdown. It was like, oh my God. And that was the best game ever, I guess, in terms of being there, to be able to see the true cannon that Nick Foles has. And when he's on, it's like, whew, those were some impressive throws. And then we saw it in the Super Bowl as well. He can really put on a show downfield. Not to be like, here's why Nick Foles is great, but yeah, this is
go get your good. Bears jersey, no? It's okay, I'll put mine on too.
The other one of recent, I guess these are recent memories because I just have too many to go on about. But so I lived in North Carolina for the year after the Super Bowl, and like that's actually why I started doing the podcast and stuff, is because I was trying to find my purpose, and the only thing I loved more than or equal to music was Philly sports. So I did that podcast, and I started getting into trying to be a podcasting and sports writing professional. The hours are just crazy for that, so I commend those people who can do it, but you just have to see everything and read the news at all times to be informed enough to even talk about it on a podcast, which is why I have to be like, this is a fun podcast, but I'm not a football professional by any means. So any hot take I have is just that. It is not informed enough to call it a true take. But anyways, I moved down to North Carolina, got really into it, blah, blah, blah. That's the year that, oh my God, somehow we've made it back to the playoffs against all odds with Nick Foles leading us. Mm-hmm. And then, like, I saw the double doink. I was just in my apartment alone just watching it, and like that's one of those moments where I was screaming and I don't care who could hear it. It was just like, whoa, you know, and I'm alone like an idiot, but whatever. I was so happy. And so I decided, you know what, it's in New Orleans, I'm road tripping, I'm going to the game. And so I called up two of my buddies. One of them was in Florida, one was in Nashville, and they weren't even Eagles fans. Really, they were just like, yeah, sounds like a fun trip. So we road tripped down 16 hours to New Orleans, you know, did the whole New Orleans, what's the street called, Bourbon Street, all that good stuff. Actually, funny story before I get to the game, we went to like a really local like dive bar place. Like my one friend Paul found it. It was apparently like the best spot to get shrimp po' boys. But I didn't factor in that it was going to be a local dive bar with no Eagles fans whatsoever. And I So I want to be an obnoxious Eagles fan to a certain extent, but me as a person is just, I don't want attention on me and I don't want to start trouble. So I didn't put the two together. That didn't work in this scenario, but I was like, I have a light up sweater, a light up ugly Christmas sweater of the Eagles. I'm going to wear this light up sweater into a New Orleans dive bar and cause no issues. Sure awesome. Enough, everybody, like, nobody would let me get up to the bar, and nobody was even acknowledging our existence. And then one of the ladies who was sitting at the bar, who must have been like mid to late 30s, just turns to me and she's like, "You ain't getting served with that on." That's all she said. So I went up and tried to hide so my friends could get served and we could leave that place. And like immediately upon leaving, I was like, I'm going to switch into a more modest Eagle shirt.
Yeah.
Which I wish I hadn't, because I gave in to their stupid, mean hazing, but we do the same thing. I should have just been like, haha, good fun, but
Sean
whatever.
Payton's a crybaby.
It was it was really an awesome experience. The Superdome is awesome, and it was a phenomenal game all the way up to when, Alshon let the one go through his fingers, and that's, there are those certain moments in life that you'll never forget, no matter how hazy your memories get, and like that's one for me that's like, I can see it right now from my vantage point at the Superdome, watching that pass thrown on a drive where I'm like, oh my God, we're going to do this again. We're going to be back in the NFC Championship game thanks to some sort of magic, because I think the Saints kicker missed a field goal to give them one more chance. Mm-hmm. And you're watching this and it's just like, oh no, is that through his fingers? And it's into the guy's arms before you can think, and you're like, just frozen. And then watching Foles run off the field there, I knew that was the last time I'd see him in Eagle Green, and I was like, so sad. But an awesome trip. And then a little bit of self-promo here. I wrote a 4-part letter to Nick Foles at my sports writing job. You can feel free to find it, section 215. It was my best piece of, art ever in terms of sports writing before I called that career early and went back to doing music.
It's awesome, man. Yeah, I remember I had the same feeling with that game, too. I woke up the next morning, and I was unemployed at the time. It was before I got my baking job, and I remember waking up and just feeling like, oh my God, like Nick Foles is no longer going to be on the Eagles. Like, that was just, it's a crushing thing, and like for those who aren't football fans or even Eagles fans, like it's a hard feeling to describe, knowing that someone that was like such a big part of the franchise for such a short little time was just like, daddy's leaving. Bye.
I mean, I think it's also like the added emotion of him having been an Eagle before and having performed really well and done everything he could have to been, earned that spot as the franchise quarterback, and then getting traded away because Chip Kelly's Chip Kelly, and who the hell knows what was going on there. But it's like, for those of us who had hope for him back then, to see him perform again, it was like, we're trying to tell you guys this guy's a good quarterback. Like, why aren't you listening? But whatever it may be, it was definitely like it's that somber moment. I don't want to say it's like, it's not like somebody dying, but it's kind of like watching, your best friend move across the country or something like that. I don't know. It's just like, you really want to believe that you're going to stay in touch with them, but it's going to be tough, and you're going to watch his games, and it doesn't help that he keeps getting hurt on the other teams that he plays for, and then what did you expect going to the Jaguars? That franchise is a mess.
Well, and I remember when he first came in against the Falcons this past year, and he led them on like a 20-point comeback or something to win the game. I was like, yep, that's Nick Foles.
Yep, that's the guy.
Shedding a tear. But with that being said, we're going to wrap up there. Great podcast. We had the highs. We had my cousin's girlfriend's house, the lows of the Eagles, and then finishing on a high note, flying high. Flying high pod with some fun Eagles memories. Pete, thank you again for joining me. This was a lot of fun. Hopefully we can get together with Aaron maybe for another episode this season.
Yeah, man, a blast really cool. As always. And, definitely would love to initiate Aaron as co-host with a proper episode. But I must say before we go, man, what was season 2 was phenomenal. I have texted to you about it, but the way I listen to my podcast is I won't listen for a really long time, and then I'll have a day at work or like just a day where it's like I'm not going to listen to music. I'm just going to dedicate my day to a pod, and I'll just listen straight through the season, which is like, and it's almost like binge watching Netflix as opposed to watching weekly or whatever. So like I'm listening to the narrative, and as you're making callbacks to previous episodes, I'm like, I just listened to that. But no, it was great. I really enjoyed the diner countdown. That was a really great episode. Glad to see the Coop up there on both of your lists. And I just really enjoy it. So always down to come back.
Really appreciate that. Yeah, we're working on the finale. We're talking about doing like a multi-person, like 3 or 4 people finale. So I'm sure you're promoting it now in your episodes, but stickers and T-shirts. Am I right? Yeah, stickers and T-shirts. We got Coffee Vibes ones, and then I'm hoping to get another sticker set out before in time for season 3. There's going to be Fetus Matt, which is a callback to the episode that we did. It's a picture of me with no beard, and then my girlfriend Kayla actually designed one. I think it was from our Christmas episode. I said something about being a slut for Wawa, so she designed me this one that it's like Wawa slut. It looks like a neon sign. So like, hopefully a couple of those.
The merch line is expanding.
It's going somewhere, and I'm really excited. So if you like what you heard, give us a follow here on SoundCloud. Check us out on Instagram at Fueled by Coffee Pod. If you would like some merch, send a message. Also, you can check out Pete's band, My Cousin's Girlfriend's House. Check him out on all social medias, pretty much everywhere you get your music. You can check out his old podcast, Flying High Pod.
Some hot takes there.
Some hot takes, but you know what? This was fun, man. Looking forward to having you on a future episode, and I'm looking forward to the rest of the season. Check back in a couple weeks for the next installment where we chat fantasy football.